Cyber attacks are already here, from our banks to our power grids. Is Malaysia under siege?
APT threats are real. More than 2,000 incidents has been reported. They are targeting our national critical infrastructures.
Are we fighting back hard enough to protect our country from cyber attacks? Find out on Decimal Point. In March 2025, shocking news. A cyber attack hit KLIA's computer systems, threatening to disrupt airport operations. The Prime Minister later revealed that the hackers demanded a ransom of $10 million, but the government refused to pay. This incident raises urgent questions, not just for the government, but for every one of us. Today, we sit down with an expert to uncover the threats and defenses in cybersecurity, safeguarding Malaysia's digital economy. Mr. Wan, recently Singapore has revealed that they are facing some sophisticated cyber attacks into their infrastructure or critical infrastructure, and this may be linked to a China-based group called UNC 3886. Does Malaysia, face similar threats, and what role does Cybersecurity Malaysia play in detecting threats like this?
Okay, UNC 3886 is actually part of the Advanced Persistent Threats, and also called APTs. APTs is not only an issue to a single country. It's actually a global threats and it can be in anywhere. While in Malaysia we don't have such report yet talking about specific UNC 3886 that are exploiting the country, but we do actually monitor APTs in several networks. We have a group within Cybersecurity Malaysia that we call Cyber Risk Intelligence, that we actually monitor a certain threat actors. We look at several threat actors. We actually monitor some breach forums, because this is where people or the adversaries, the threat actors are communicating. So from the monitoring on what are the threats or what are APTs that are actually attacking or making such instructions like that, we are able to actually to a certain extent monitor certain parts. But of course, APTs is very unique. The name APTs means that it's probably going to be there in your network for some time, or probably for a short time or long time. You don't know. They will be when they start making communications with the other part, we call it command and control. Okay. So when it comes to APT, the things that are important for people like us is that they are always what we call IOC, which is the indicator of compromise. Typically, you will see reports. So in recent case, for example, when Singapore made the announcement, then there are reports showing or giving what are the indicator of compromise for specific to UNC 3886. So what company or organization like us, Cybersecurity Malaysia, we can actually take these inputs and then configure our systems to actually detect this because of the indicators that were given. And in Cybersecurity Malaysia, we also have our Computer Emergency Response Team, we call it MyCERT, and we have Cyber 999. So typically, when organizations have incidents or where they feel they're being threatened or they're being exploited, they actually make that reports to us and we can take necessary actions. Actions can be either through phone conversations, we provide recommendation and advisories, or we can also be on site talking to the victims, taking some evidence, doing analysis and providing recommendations. In addition to that, our cyber risk intelligence team, we have been monitoring more than 400 threat actors for the last 3 to 4 years. So there are lots of numbers that we have been monitoring, and while it is still small in that scale, but we believe to a certain extent we do have some capabilities in detecting some of these the similar attacks.
So based on what you mentioned now, about for the past 3 or 4 years, it's about 400 of these APTs.
Threat actors.
Threat actors.
Yeah.
Threat actors. But when it comes back to ATPs, how real are those here in Malaysia when it comes to sectors like, for example, banking or energy or even healthcare? Are we able to detect that, and is it very active here?
Yes, so APT threats are real. They are real. They have been around for many years, and I think based on lots of reports, you will see it's a significant increase in the cases that have been reported. I think the number of cases being reported is a good indicator to show that the threats are real. More than 2,000 incidents has been reported. They are targeting the national critical infrastructures, which is including the healthcare sector as well, in addition to other critical sectors.
Is this considered high, 2,000, or is it just somewhere in between?
I would say high because it's a comparison within the previous year. So the report says about 43% increase in terms of the incident being reported targeting a specific national infrastructures. So 42% is a high number. So in addition to the APT attacks, I think of late there are a number of attacks based on AI assisted attacks. You know, we've heard about videos on deepfake images and whatnot. And even recently, there are cases whereby in the financial system, some amount of money being transferred due to the deepfake impersonator. So I believe in addition to APTs that are impacting the critical sectors, we're also talking about bigger threats are coming our way, which is AI-based attacks. Last year, we actually recorded Ringgit Malaysia 1.4 billion loss due to scams.
Malaysia is promoting itself as the ASEAN digital economy hub as well as for digital nomads, with the rapid growth of data centers, 5G telco networks as well as AI investments. From Q1 to Q2 of 2025 alone, digital investments surged by 125%. Now, in the same vein, now that Malaysia is pushing towards a digital economy, now for fintech, smart cities, even AI adoption, are any one of these sectors more vulnerable towards espionage or sabotage? Okay,
unfortunately, I think all sectors are just vulnerable to cyber attacks. We cannot be saying that, this sector is safer and the other sector is safer. Even though we know from the statistics, the targets, especially these days, the healthcare is targeting, finance is there, transportation is there as well. So these are kind of the top 3 sectors that are being targeted. But the fact that all other sectors are equally vulnerable. It's a matter of probably they don't have what's called the crown jewel. People probably don't have the data that probably they wanted and things like that. And even more so, like these days, all these attacks are more easier than before because of AI assisted, for example. You've heard about phishing, for example, right? And now we have an AI assisted phishing. You heard about ransomware. Now people have ransomware as a service. Yeah, you can actually then, if I don't like you or your company, I probably want to ransom your company. I can actually, subscribe or buy these services. They give you all the means that you need to do that. I just subscribe to it. They give me all this, the right tools. Okay. I start maybe by phishing you, and then you wrongly click the wrong message and you get ransom. And then I can also facilitate how you're going to pay the ransom. You just click and go to this website, make that payment. Every day I will get a payment. Of course, I make some payment back to the service provider. So it's as easy as that these days, and that's why I said no sectors are actually safer than the other. But of course, in critical sectors, we have to look from many angles, right? When it comes to healthcare, I think is one of the sectors these days that are a lot being targeted. If you look at not in this country, I think last year or last 2 years, there are reports in the UK, in the Europe, a ransomware attack in one of the hospitals, and that caused malfunction, disruption to the operations, to the ICU operations and whatnot. And the consequences are just terrible, it's fatal. And this is where we cannot rest laurel and saying that while they're attacking healthcare, you're in other sectors, you're okay now for now, but the fact that they are not okay. I think another example in Malaysia, like we all know about the MALAYSIA case, this got a ransomware attack. And there's a good example to show that in transportation, being a critical sector, we have to actually strengthen, be more resilient, because disruption on those sectors like our transportation is not good, right? It causes chaos. We cannot take up the planes, stop our there's so many things, consequences that happen that actually impacting not only the operations, the people, but at the end of the day is the economy of the country. So that's critical. I also would like to add part of the, I would say, threats or cyber attacks, why we are so vulnerable, is also because the loss of data breach that happen without we knowing about it. Yeah. We don't know about it until it's probably too late. There are many factors. You can talk about how things get leaked out and things like that. Maybe certain sectors, like the financial, transportation, they probably have enough monitoring mechanism, but probably other sectors that, like we talk about small and medium enterprises, they probably have lots of data that are so critical that we probably always forgetful about this, right? And people, the bad guy, can easily grab this data because they don't have enough countermeasures or preventive measures and dump this in the dark web. And we've heard about all these telco data get leaked out throughout the many years, not only in Malaysia, in other countries as well. So data breach is another important areas that we in CyberSecurity Malaysia would play some role in ensuring that people know about this. But what I'm trying to say, all the critical sectors must do their part, and know what to protect and put more measures to protect the data. Another point I would like to make is that when we talk about cyber attacks, it's not only about critical sectors. We talk about financials, healthcare, and transportation just now, right? And it's actually the whole ecosystem that needs to be protected. Healthcare will have its own medical suppliers, right? Transportation will have its own supply chain that supplies certain things. And how do we ensure all these supply chain providers and suppliers are safe from these cyber attacks? And this is where kind of the missing link. While we're actually protecting our own sectors and organizations, there are probably other sectors, small sectors or supply chain that we are missing in terms of strengthening the defense, their own controls. And that poses an issue if the supply chains gets attacked.
So, meaning to say that it's not only that certain sector, but also the entire ecosystem that we have to ensure is, it's safeguarded so that there's no weak point when it comes to cybersecurity.
Okay, that's correct. When it comes to like state-sponsored kind of thing, they're probably not that interested with SMEs, but it could also be interested when SMEs is holding, very confidential data, the data that they want. They're probably targeting bigger companies, large companies, and scam again, just like cyber attacks, all sectors are vulnerable. SMEs are definitely vulnerable because scams doesn't really care who you're coming from. They only attacks you when you are vulnerable. And in fact, scam is very interesting in Malaysia. For last year, we actually recorded ringgit Malaysia 1.4 billion loss.
Billion?
Yes, due to scams.
Right.
And that number, while we think is high, we know that our neighboring countries are even higher. And the total losses recorded in scams in Asia Pacific, if I'm not wrong, equals like 2/3 of the world. Meaning the other 1/3 is the rest of the world in terms of losses in scams. So it's a large amount of money that we are talking about. And I believe that small and medium enterprise companies, SMEs, since I mentioned before, they are probably the weakest link as part of the bigger cybersecurity ecosystem. And this is where the missing link. And I believe SMEs must be assisted in a proper manner so that they are able to actually become stronger and resilient to cyber attacks. Investment scam. Generally, if things are too good to be true, is always not a good thing. That is a scam.
Malaysia drew more than 86 billion ringgit in data center investments in 2024 from tech giants like Google, Microsoft, AWS, Nvidia and ByteDance, making us ASEAN's leading hub with 77 data centers. What more is being done to keep these investments coming? So I would like to continue that conversation when you mentioned about weakness, right? So when it comes to the Malaysian digital economy, what are the weak points that are usually vulnerable? Is it outdated software or is it lack of encryption? What is it exactly?
Okay, so when it comes to weak points, as mentioned, all organizations are vulnerable or sectors are vulnerable. So there are lots of things that it's pretty technical in that nature, but as you said, outdated system or unpatched systems is actually one of the most important weak points that people always gone unnoticed. Because the bad actors, what they're doing is actually they're trying the weak points, and if you don't actually patch your systems, this is where they can find a way to go into your system.
All right, could you further elaborate what does patch mean?
Okay, take for example, a simple like we're having our own Android phones, iOS. We're having our own Windows laptops. We have Windows OS, Microsoft Windows running. Every now and then you will see they're asking that it needs to be updated, their new software, their new need to be updated, so that what happened is actually when these new things, the OS need to be, or the operating system need to be updated, what they are trying to do is that they have found some new threats or holes or vulnerabilities within the existing system, and by installing a new one or updating a new one, you're actually closing the hole or the weaknesses of the older system. So unpatch, also when you patch the system, this is where you're actually closing the weak points. So when you close the weak points, there's no way people can actually exploit you. However, the challenge is that the weak points is not sustainable in that sense. I mean, you will need to keep patching because the bad guys are smarter as well. The moment you patch a hole, there's probably another hole that's going to come up, and the operating system need to be updated again. You need to also do very due diligence in ensuring that you patch all the system. Say, for example, your own phone, you're doing Android or your iOS, for example.
For the sake of this show, yes, iOS.
iOS, and you see iOS had a number of updates as well, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't update, they will ask you to update, isn't it?
Yes.
Because if you don't update, you're actually exposing your mobile phones to certain exploits. And this is what happened when it comes to cyber attacks. So we're talking about our own personal phone. What if we're talking about a big organization? The loss of laptops there, the loss of servers there, and also mobiles, tablets and whatnot. And all these are all entry points for people to go into your environment, into your network. So these are the weak points that an organization must look after. Of course, there are a lot more. A bit technical, for example, if you're a big company, you always have network devices. You have your own firewalls, you have your own servers, applications, and all these systems, OS, applications, firmwares, all need to be updated from time to time. And failure to do so will actually expose you to all these attacks.
Yes, and these are all, for example, like organizations, SMEs, startups, these are all on those levels. But what about the individual levels? How can we protect ourselves? Because nowadays we are connected to the internet 24/7 a day. So how can we protect ourselves from threats, for example, like what we talked about earlier about scams?
Okay. I think scams is very unique, and again, as I mentioned before, it's not only impacting us, it's a global thing. It's just that in our region, for whatever reasons, it is very rampant. Lots of our incidents being reported to us. In every month, 70% of those are coming from scam or online fraud, investment scam. I think as a person, what we must do, if we are almost falling prey to this investment scam, for example, we must always keep in mind that, if anything is too good to be true that's coming your way, you're surfing your IG, your Facebook, somebody sending, like people got dragged into a Telegram group, all this investment, you spend 100 ringgit, return 500 ringgit, or even 1,000. So I think generally, if things are too good to be true, is always not a good thing. It always that, and a first thing that is a scam. You must tell yourself it's scam, and therefore you must actually check. And I think in Malaysia, there are a number of places that you can actually check whether or not the product or the scheme that you're trying to invest is legitimate or not. For example, you can check at Bank Negara Malaysia websites. There are lists, a portal that talk about what companies are licensed to actually make such investment. Also in Securities Commission, there are portal there that check whether this product is legitimate or not. And you talk about cryptocurrency product, all this Bitcoin thing, etc. So they are actually products that have been, I would say, legitimate product has been verified by authorities like Securities Commission that we can actually use. And another important thing is that when it comes to scams, we as individuals, as citizens, we should know that we can always check the account number, that if we are making investment, we want to transfer money, right? Yes. So we must remember that the account number that was given to us, we can check whether it's a mule account or not. I think this is where we can go to police, the RMP, the Royal Malaysian Police website, the Semak Mule, where you can check not only the account numbers is legitimate or not, you can also check the phone numbers that keep calling you, whether they're really scammers, they're your old friends that are trying to connect to you. Because these days you don't entertain the call that has no names, right? It's just numbers. Yes. But it could be actually your long lost friend that's trying to connect back to you, right? So these are I think you as user, we must take some precautions, check before we actually make such investment or make such payment. There are facilities available to safeguard our own self. And when it comes to scams, I think it's very important for all Malaysians to know that if you feel that you've been scammed, you can actually go and call 997. It's been run by National Scam Response Center. This is where you can actually report your case, and they will have steps how you can resolve and probably have a chance to recover your money.
All right, now that we know how to protect ourselves, this brings me to my next question on what are the efforts of government agencies, for example, like CyberSecurity in Malaysia?
In terms of collaborations, I must say that it's very important that we actually very closely working with a National Cybersecurity Agency, NACSA, especially in resolving incidents that are related to Malaysian governments, Malaysian companies, as well as private companies.
And as Malaysia aims to become a regional tech hub, what kind of standards and also best practices that Malaysia should adopt for it to be safe and also for investors to become confident in Malaysia?
We are very much lucky now that we have CyberSecurity Act that not only meant for the national critical information infrastructures, but can also be used as part of the bigger organizations or means of SMEs and whatnot to actually at least comply and adhere to them. Ultimately, it will show that Malaysia is there as part of protecting and making sure that our cyberspace are secure and resilient. I think as an organization these days, there are two important, I would say, metrics that people should look at, which is how fast you detect an incident, and then how fast you respond to it. So the mean time to detect and the mean time to response are two key metrics that all organizations must look at to ensure that your organization is secure and resilient to cyber attacks. Let's talk about us as individuals. Our internet penetration is just so huge. About 97% people are connected to the internet, and what that means is that we are all connected to something that we are unsure of, right? And I think one of the principles that we can apply as part of making sure that not only the companies, organizations are resilient, we as individuals should also be resilient. And based on that, one of the principles that can be used is actually the zero trust, meaning that we should apply all this authentication, multi-factor authentication. We don't trust people. We use the use of, we talk about passkeys these days, secure password and whatnot. I think these are the things that we should start be not only advocating, but start actually walk the talk, make sure that we are actually using them, applying them, not only at work but also in our daily life.
Our SMEs and startups, which are already behind bigger corporations in digital adoption, must not only catch up, but also have a steep learning curve in cybersecurity. As the digital economy is expected to surpass 25% of GDP in 2025, cybersecurity is the trusted partner in keeping Malaysia's momentum strong. For more exciting developments, join us next time on Decimal Point.